Good evening, everyone. We're about to start. Please make sure that you call your friends so that they can join and be able to learn something from this session too. We'll be starting in a few minutes. So, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. A few housekeeping rules before we start. So, please, this is a gentle reminder that we're streaming live. So, we would appreciate it if your devices were on mute to decrease the chances of interference. Please, as well, if you have any question, post them directly in the chat or to me, and we'll try our best to answer them within the break or at the end of the presentation. So, the topic for today is going to be a continuation of religious literature compared. But today we'll be looking at authenticity and one top feature. Hope you enjoy, and over to you, Dr. Pandit.
Thank you. Nice to be with you again this evening. Maybe my face is becoming a little more familiar as we go along. And I really am enjoying this presentation, because when a person speaks, he doesn't speak only to the listeners. The words come back to the person who speaks. So it is a nice opportunity for me to again go through the stuff that we are going together. So let's get to the sharing of the screen and get to a review of what we did yesterday. So we said that we were looking for the only way, and we described it as a red marble, meaning it would have to be different, unique. Doesn't have to be better, doesn't have to be out in front. It just has to be completely different. And we saw that with our first question, which was on the literature. Ancient literature is divided into basically four: legend, folk, myth, and historical. And when you look at those four, obviously the historical is the most credible. And then when you look at the historical, among the historical pieces of literature, we find that there are three factors that make it even more credible, in fact, the most credible. And we find those three to be: number one, the gaps between the event and the oral tradition, and the gap between the oral tradition and the written tradition, and then the gap between the written tradition and the earliest manuscript we have. Number two is the number of manuscripts that back the document. If it is small, the credibility is less. If it is high, the credibility rises. And number three, where were the authors compared to the actual story that they were really reporting? When you look at those three, we find in gaps, the New Testament has the least gaps, less than 10 years, which is no gap in the minds of a historian. And also there was no change at all. The very first Christian writing describes him as God. No change from one day to another. Number two, the number of manuscripts is by far the highest backing any ancient document, 24,900 manuscripts. And number three, where were these authors? They were all inside the very story they were writing. You cannot get any closer than inside. And so, with these three, we agreed that the New Testament is the best attested historical piece of literature of the ancient world compared to all ancient writings, the best. And we call it the gold standard. We said if there's any question, we go to the New Testament to find out. And if the New Testament disagrees with that, then that is wrong, not the New Testament being wrong. This is how we usually look at it. We look at secular historical writings and say, if that is right, then the New Testament is wrong. But when we look at the actual features that make it historical, it is the New Testament that is the gold standard. Amazing. So today, the two questions we will do, one is authenticity and one top feature. So the question two is, can we check the authenticity? And here's the question. Does the writing or the literature contain and describe a test that an inquirer could use to determine its authenticity? What's the meaning? Evidence that the message came to the human race from a source that would be classed supernatural in nature and quality, from that world, from the realm of the gods. Is there any evidence of that? Yesterday we saw that there is evidence that it is very impressive as a historical piece of literature, but that doesn't mean it came from God. So now we're asking, is there any evidence that it came from somewhere else than a human source? So that's the question we are asking, and we're going to look at the writings now. In Hinduism, this is from the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. The words are, we have to accept it as it is. Otherwise, there is no point in trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita and its speaker, Lord Krishna. In other words, you have to just accept it. If you like it, or if you want it, take it. Otherwise, toss it out. There's no test described. In Buddhism, it's the same thing. Genuine realization of the emptiness of the phenomenon world is a direct intuition of the highest truth. Absolute truth is unconditional, undeterminate. In other words, you cannot determine. There is no test beyond thought and word. So both Hinduism and Buddhism do not point to a test within the literature, which was the question I asked. However, they do point to a test, and the test is your experience. They say experience it, and then you will know what we are talking about. Experience is a reasonable and credible test, but it cannot be used to identify the unique one because there are already two. If two of them say it is unique, how can it be? Because your unique means only one. Unique comes from the word uni, one. Number two, if you say Buddhism and Hinduism are the unique ones, it really doesn't count because of the next statement that we see on the board, on the screen. All religions state this as a test. There's not a single religion that ever says, just read it and you'll go straight to heaven or to paradise or to nirvana. Every one of the religions says you read it and also put it into practice and experience it. Then you will reach your goal. So this test is not a universal test. So the other thing is, how can everyone test every religion to find out? So really, it's impossible. So this experience test is an impractical test. So we leave these two aside and we go to Islam. Islam does have a test. It says, produce one chapter comparable to it. Call upon your idols to assist you if what you say is true, but if you fail, as you are sure to fail. The test is to make, in this case, one chapter, and here's another verse. Ayah 88 of Surah 17 of the Quran says, if men and jinn are creatures in between angels and humans, If men and jinn combined to produce a book akin to this Quran, they would surely fail to produce its like. And in 1113, it says 10 chapters even. And in 1030 is not even one chapter. So can you produce a writing that equals the Quran? That's the test. Now, when I was doing this search, I was quite happy that there was a test. Because remember, the Hindus and Buddhists said there is no test in their writings. I wanted to look for a test in the writings, and here's a test. So I was happy and I said, okay, let me do the test. But when I started to do the test, four things blocked the test. And here are the four. Number one, what aspect is to be equaled? It does not say what aspect. In other words, if you ask me to equal so and so, then I will ask, in what aspect should I equal him? Should I equal him in height or weight, complexion, or muscular build, or athletic ability, or scholastic ability, or hair, or what? You must describe the test and say you must equal in this. If you don't describe it, then I will use whatever test I want. Then I will always be the winner because I will choose the one that I want. If you're a little shorter, I'll say, I'll take the height. And if you're a little less in weight, I'll say, take the weight. You see, you must describe the aspect. Then it will be a fair test. Number two, what is the method of comparison that we will use? Will it be subjective, like, I like it and so it's good, I don't like it, so it's bad? Or will it be an objective method by which we'll give points so that this one gets 15 and this one gets 20, so the one which gets 20 wins? There's no method described at all. Number three, who will be the judge? Now, will it be, for example, a mullah in one of the masjids? Or will it be somebody from another religion? Or will it be maybe a neutral committee established by the United Nations? If you don't describe who will be the judge, by default, the judge will be the one who's doing the test. So it'll be me or you if you're going to do the test. And if that's the case, and if I am the judge, then the game is over. You know why? Because I have read other writings. Wow, that are fantastic, beautiful. Khalil Gibran, Omar Khayyam, Jalaluddin Rumi, all these Arabic writers, beautiful writing. I can never read those and look at the Quran and say the Quran is superior to all of these. No. In fact, the other question is, should a Sunni Muslim or should a Shia Muslim do the test? Basically, they are divided into those two groups, Sunnis and Shiites. The fact is, in some of the writings of the Shiites, they say that you can equal the Quran. So now the test is almost over. And as far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll tell you another reason why it's over. Because I come from the state of Bengal in India. Bengal produced the only Nobel laureate from India. His name is Rabindranath Tagore. He wrote the book Gitanjali in Bengali, in that language. And even today, if I ever have to go back to Bengal, and I've gone there, and my relatives have read from the book, my jaws just drop open. It is so beautiful. The language, the lilt, the rhythm, and the sudden expression that bring you face to face with something that was so unexpected and yet so real. Wow, I can never, ever say that it is inferior to the Quran. In fact, I would happily, boldly and confidently say it's better than the Quran. What can I do? If you leave me as the judge, then the game is up. Number four, the Quran came down from a mother book that Allah keeps in heaven. The mother book is written in Arabic. Therefore, whatever comes down has to be in Arabic. And so if you read the Quran, Allah says, I have sent you the Quran in Arabic. Why? Because the words are not the only method of expression. It's the language. And it's not just the words in the language. It is the sound of the words. Arabic has a specific sound. And because of the way it's written, it has also not only the sound, but a lilt and a rhythm. And that is also a part of how Allah sends his message through the Quran. And that's why if you see a Muslim, they will be reading this way, back and forth in a rhythm, because the writing is in a rhythm. So now, if we have to equal that, we have to write it in Arabic and try to get that rhythm as well, to put the meaning of what we are trying to say. So, how many people know Arabic in the whole world? By the way, the Arabic in the Quran is quite different from the spoken Arabic in the Arabian Peninsula. The spoken Arabic has its own expressions. And a person who just speaks Arabic doesn't mean that he can understand the Quranic Arabic, because that is a literary style that is very different. So you have to understand and know that Arabic. How many people know that Arabic? We have guesstimated, when you do your calculations, less than 0.5% of the human population know that Arabic. So 99.5% of the human race don't know that Arabic. Then how can they do the test? So when you do take all these four, you realize that the test which says make something equal to the Quran is not a universal test. It is not a practical test. And so it is not a test at all. So now we come then to the Judeo-Christian, and we put them together, and you'll see the reason why in a moment. But I'm going to introduce that test by reading out a statement by Pierre Simon Laplace. Laplace was a brilliant French scientist. He lived a few hundred years ago, soon after Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton. And I believe Sir Isaac Newton to be the greatest scientist the world has ever known. Yes, there are others also who are almost there. I think like Albert Einstein or the one from England, Stephen Hawking. They are also way up there. But if you use the word Isaac Newton, then you have said something of a superlative level. And they used to call Pierre Simon Laplace the Isaac Newton of France. So he was really top out there. In fact, when I was studying medical studies, we used to learn the laws of Laplace. 200 years later, his laws are still being studied. Brilliant person. Isaac Newton was a well-known Christian churchgoer. Pierre Simon Laplace was a hard-nosed, confirmed atheist. Now, he enunciated what is called or known as scientific determinism. It's a big word, and I'm going to read the sentence, and then I will tell you what he means. But I want you to note one thing in that sentence. Usually atheists, or not usually, almost all atheists, never refer to any mind other than human minds. There cannot be any other mind. Only the human mind is the maximum. If you call some other mind, then you can't be called an atheist, because the other mind will be in the other realm. So you're not supposed to. But in this statement, Pierre Simon Laplace uses the word intellect, other than human. It's amazing, but he uses it. And here's the statement. I'm going to read it out and tell you what it means. We may regard the present state of the universe as the effect of its past and the cause of its future. An intellect which at a certain moment would know all the forces that set nature in motion and all positions of all items of which nature is composed, if this intellect were also vast enough to submit these data for analysis, it would embrace in a single formula the movements of the greatest bodies of the universe and those of the tiniest atom. For such an intellect, nothing would be uncertain, and the future, just like the past, would be present before its eyes. Now, can you see an atheist using the word intellect and eyes? Amazing. But here's what he's saying. He's saying, if there is a mind, an intellect, that knows every particle in the universe, and knows every feature and every property of every particle, and also knows every law that governs every particle, then to that intellect, Nothing would be uncertain. For example, this is a this is a mouse. This intellect, if he knew every particle in this mouse and knew every property and feature of every particle, knew every law that governed every particle, then this intellect could look at this mouse and he could tell you where every atom was 200 years ago because he knows everything. He knows where, how they move because of the laws. He knows how the properties are and how the laws govern those properties. He can also do another thing. He can look forward 200 years and tell you where exactly every atom would be because he knows every atom and he knows every property and feature and every law that governs every atom. In other words, he would be an intellect that has this ability. So, how will we check out whether this is the intellect? Suppose the intellect sat here and said, I am the intellect. How will you check me out to find out whether I am the intellect? Wow, that would be a tall order. We would think that we would have to find a way of checking you out. How will you check me out? If you start to speak to me in English, I might start speaking to you in German or in Sanskrit. Then how will we even converse? Because I'm the intellect, I know everything. But there is a way in which an ordinary person might be able to test him. And this is one way. If you were to ask me, can you tell me what will happen tomorrow? Can you tell me what will happen next week? Can you tell me what will happen next month? Can you tell me what will happen next year? And can you tell me what will happen after 5 years? And if all 5 of them come true, then we might think in our minds, hey, I think this is that intellect. Can you see the test? That intellect, he should be able to say what will happen tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now. And all of them accurately. That is the exact test that is written in the Judeo-Christian scriptures. It says, present your case, says the Lord. Let them bring forth and show us what will happen. Declare to us things to come. Show the things that are to come hereafter, that we may know that you are that intellect. Isaiah says, use the word gods. Same thing, that intellect who knows everything. What is this called? It's called predictive prophecy. Can you tell it before it happens? Now, this is a superhuman characteristic because no human can go by a time machine to 100 years from now and then come back and tell us what will happen then. Or run back 200 years and say what was there and then can tell us what actually happened. We can't do that because time governs us. We do not govern time. And so this is a superhuman quality to say what will happen before. Now, it's called predictive prophecy. In other words, you must be able to say it clearly, and it must be also be able to be verified that it happened. In fact, there's a book called What is Atheism? A Short Introduction by Douglas Kruger. He's an atheist. He says there are 5 criteria for a genuine prophecy. Number 1, it should be clear with enough detail to specifically describe the event to be fulfilled. It should be unusual or unique and not a common everyday occurrence. It should be made prior to the event that was supposed to be its fulfillment. It should not be the sort that could be the result of an educated guess. It should not be staged or manipulated to intentionally cause its fulfillment. In other words, you shouldn't do it. The person who prophesies should not go ahead and do it. So these 5, and I added one more at the bottom, you can see, it should not be by chance. In other words, it should be outside statistical probability. It should not be something that might happen by chance. So with these, we're going to look at 1, 2, or 3 prophecies. Here's one. It's in the Bible. Jeremiah 51:36 says, I will make her springs dry. The her refers to Babylon because the next verse says, Babylon shall become a heap without an inhabitant. This was written about 595 BC. At that time, Babylon was the greatest, most fortified, strongest city in the world. the width of our walls that we have is about 18 inches, 20 inches. That's the thickness of our walls. Do you know how thick the wall of Babylon was? It was a double wall. In fact, we can go today because some of the ruins are still there, and you can check at the bottom, and they have measured it. It's a double wall. It is 87 feet thick. How are you going to bang it down? How high was the wall? Our walls go about 12, 15 feet, double storied building 30 feet, triple story another 10, 40 feet, 45 feet. Do you know how high the walls of Babylon went? 175 to 300 feet. Huge wall. How are you going to get across to beat that city? You'll have to have a long ladder, at least 175 feet long, but you can't come any close to the wall because if only when you come close can you climb onto the wall. You can't come close because the wall was surrounded by a moat, a ditch full of water. And they say that the moat was equal in volume to the wall, a huge body of water that surrounded the wall. How are you going to beat this kind of a city? Furthermore, the only way to beat the city is to lay siege. In other words, put your soldiers at the gates and don't let anybody come in or go out because your food is actually from the farmlands outside the city. They have to bring it in. And if you stop them from coming in, then your people starve inside. And that's why laying siege is a very effective military strategy. You just stop them from going in and out. But to do that, you have to keep your soldiers there. Don't pay, rather pay them for just sitting and staring at the gate. So you have to be pretty rich to lay siege. You have to pay your soldiers while they're doing nothing. How do soldiers get paid? They fight and they capture booty and then they share the booty. That's the main payment. If they're not doing that, then you have to pay them. So sieges don't really last very, very long. 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, 1 year maximum. And you can stretch it out to 1.5 to 2.5 would be 2.5 years would be simply too long. Huge long siege. Why would the people in Babylon laugh at anyone who's wanting to lay siege to Babylon? Because inside the storehouse in Babylon, there was enough food for everyone for a period of 20 years. Now, how are you going to win? But Babylon did fall. Do you know how? Well, Herodotus, in writing the history, does give us an idea. There are some additions that are put into the story, some traditional parts, but it goes something like this. Cyrus the Great was winning all his wars, and he's a Persian, by the way, Medo-Persian. He was winning all his wars until he came to Babylon and he said, if I get Babylon, I will be world emperor. So I need to defeat Babylon. I need it destroyed. I need to conquer it. So he sent his scouts all around, figuring out how to hit at this city. There's no way. One day when he was traveling around scouting, his horse died in one of the tributaries of the river Euphrates. Now, the river Euphrates is the river that not only supplies Babylon, but Babylon sits on it. The river Euphrates goes on one end and comes out the other end. And so when his horse died in one of the tributaries of the river Euphrates, the record says that Cyrus got angry with the river because the river killed his favorite horse. So he called his generals and he said, I'm angry with this river. I do not want it to run anymore. I'm so mad that I want you to drain this river dry. That is what they did, says Herodotus in the history book. He says those generals got together with their soldiers. They dug anywhere from 80 to 300 aqueducts, small canals, and drained the river dry. When they drained it so the river level came really down, Cyrus saw his way into the city on the riverbed, and Babylon fell in one night without a single drop of blood shed. The people, as soon as they saw Cyrus come in, they said, "You are our king, not the one who is on the throne here." And so they crowned him and he became the king. And little by little, Babylon deteriorated and broke down completely. But how was it conquered? Look at the statement on the screen. I will make her springs dry. That is how she was conquered. And it shall become a heap without an inhabitant. After it deteriorated, nobody lived in Babylon. Few words evoke as many images of ancient decadence, glory, and prophetic doom as does Babylon. Yet the actual place, 50 miles south of Baghdad, is flat, hot, deserted, and dusty. Deserted. And when is that written? It's written in the Smithsonian Journal periodical, June 2003. 2,500 years later, the prophecy still stands. You don't have to believe it. Just use a little bit of your money and buy a plane ticket to Baghdad, and you can go and see the ruins after the pandemic. You can go and see the ruins of Babylon today. Nobody lives there. What about the place of birth? Do you know it was the place of a person's birth was prophesied 500 years earlier, specifically by name Bethlehem? And we know the story. It was Bethlehem where this person was born. So the prophecy date is 500 and the fulfillment was about 4 BCE, same as AD. 500 years? How about vinegar? Do you know when somebody is thirsty, what do you give? Water or milk or fruit juice or something? Nobody gives vinegar. And yet the prophecy was made that somebody would say, I am thirsty. And when they say that, they would give him vinegar to drink. And for my thirst, they gave me vinegar to drink. That was a prophecy. It fulfilled in John, where it says, he said, I thirst. And they filled a sponge with sour wine, which is vinegar, and put it to his mouth. Prophecy date 1000, and the fulfillment is 31 CE or AD. 1,000 years ahead. Look, how many prophecies do you think would convince you that we have identified that intellect? Some people say, oh, I want plenty, but really, that's not practical. You're not being practical because I know you will be really impressed with just a few. Let me give you an example. Suppose I am a prophet and I'm going to prophesy something for you. You are of, for example, African descent. So your skin is black and you got really curly hair. But I am a prophet. So you both, husband and wife, you are from Africa, from African descent, and you are dark colored and your hair is just curly. But I'm a prophet, so I'm telling you, you will have a son, white, blue eyes, with straight blonde hair. That's my prophecy. That's number one. Number two, at the age of 4, this guy will be so brilliant that he will be able to read all of Shakespeare's works. At the age of 12, he will graduate from university with a professional degree. And at the age of 20, he is going to represent UK in the Olympics, and he will win the gold medal in the butterfly stroke in swimming. Can you see there's a specific, there's not just vague prophecy, specific. So that was number 4. Number 5, at the age of 30, he's going to get a phone call from Stockholm saying that he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Astrophysics. Tell me, if all 5 come true, what will you think of me? Specific. 5 specific things. Most of them against the run of play. You're not going to have a white child with blue eyes, but I said so. And if you really get that, then you will really think, I am an unusual person who has prophesied unusually. Suppose I give you another 5, and they also come true. Let me tell you, you will chase me to the ends of the earth to find out what I'm going to say next, because you'll say, hey, all those 10 came true, so what are you going to tell next about my son? Yes, we will be absolutely impressed with just 10. Do you know how many there are in the Judeo-Christian scriptures? 600. 322 refer to a single individual, Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah. 24 of them were fulfilled in one weekend. Look at some statistics about this. Remember, I said it should be within statistical probability. Peter Stoner did a calculation. He said, we find the chance that any one man fulfilled 48, not 300, 48 prophecies to be one chance in 10 to the power of 157. This is really a large number. That's his words. So we did the calculation the other day, and here it is. Elementary particles in the universe is 10 to the power of 84. The total time in seconds of the universe is 10 to the power of 18. The estimated interactions per second is 10 to the power of 20. Therefore, the total chance afforded by the universe is 10 to the power of 122. If the total number of chances provided by the entire universe since its inception, according to the standard model, the Big Bang, if the number is 10 to the power of 122 and the number of chances required so as one person would fulfill just 48 prophecies, then we would, and if that number is 10 to the power of 157, we need more number than what we have. It would require a series of 10 to the power of 35 consecutive universes, not worlds, universes to accomplish this feat. That many universes. Statistically, utterly impossible. Therefore, the prophecies were real. They were not by chance at all. Here are two statements by two different individuals. One by Pierre-Simon Laplace, an atheist, and another by a respected believer. Here are the statements. For such an intellect, I have highlighted the words we should see. For such an intellect, nothing would be uncertain. The future, just like the past, would be present before its eyes. And what did the believer say? These are the words. He that ruleth in the heavens, and I want you to look at this. He that ruleth in the heavens is the same as the intellect, according to this statement, and we'll look at it. He that ruleth in the heavens is the one who sees, eyes, the end from the beginning, the one before whom the mysteries of the past, and the future are alike, eyes, are alike. Here we go. All five words are also seen here. So here's a confirmed atheist saying the same things as a respected believer. In some circles, this believer is also called a prophetess. So a believer and a total atheist saying the same thing. So when multiple sources concur, a brilliant atheistic scientist says the same thing as a respected believer, and those words are found in ancient sacred literature, and it can be confirmed by secular history, then we should be honest and give credit where credit is due. Do you remember what we said? Honest. Give credit where credit is due. And so the best attested historical piece of literature is the Judeo-Christian book. Least gaps in time, greatest manuscript, authors were part of the story, and this is the only writing that permits an open test for possible supernatural origin. Let's take a break and some questions at this time, if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you so much. That was really interesting, especially the ending, seeing how Pierre Simon and Ellen G. White, which are completely two different people, had the same saying. So we have a question. So somebody, I think before this came up, they were asking what could be a practical and universal test to look for authenticity. And I believe you kind of answered it in the end with the Judeo-Christian literature. But if you want, or if it's possible, could you also open up a little bit about this question again?
Well, that's a good question for the reason that, we discussed yesterday that it's a historical piece of literature, but that doesn't say it's God's word. Mm-hmm. For it to be God's word, you must have some idea that it is not natural. And that is why I asked this question. And that is why I went into it to find out if the writing itself tells us what to do. Now, that's a real good test because we're not looking outside the writings. We're asking the writing, can you tell us how to test? And none of the writings do it except the Judeo-Christian writing, which has prophecies in it. And it tells you this is the test. And when we look at a complete atheist hard-nosed atheist. He also says, if an intellect can do this, then whoa, that is something amazing. It's a scientific determinism. In other words, that mind can determine what will happen in the future. And we have identified that by the use of predictive prophecy, which means you can see the prediction, you can also see its fulfillment. Now, predictive prophecy is very specific in that you can see both. Other literature have said one or the other. For example, the Hindus do have prophecy. They say that, the cyclic events, they go in a cycle. Right now, we are in what is called the Kali Yuga, the present age, and then there's another age that will come up. So there's a prophecy from this age to the next. The problem with that prophecy, you cannot test it for the simple reason that the next age will start 427,000 years from now. How are you going to test that? So there is a prophecy, but it's not testable. So that is not called predictive prophecy. Predictive prophecy means you can see where it was, what it was that was predicted, and you can also see the fulfillment of that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Another question came in, and they're asking, who is the subject of Isaiah 53? They're saying that a Jew will tell you that it's the nation Israel, and a Christian will tell you it's Jesus. So which is which and why?
I was not going to answer that right away because we still haven't figured out whether the book, the Bible, is still authentic. See, we are still in the inquiry stage.
Yeah.
But this question affords a very good test of what we were saying before. Here's what we were saying before. Whenever there is a controversial point, a neutral inquirer will always make two theories. And here it's already made for you. And also, when you want to check it out, you must go to the same source. Here, the source also is given, Isaiah 53. So here's what I'm going to do. Before I answer it, I'm not going to answer it today. I would like you to do this test. Become neutral inquirers, okay? Isaiah 53 is in question. Theory 1, that the servant, the person who is being spoken about in Isaiah 53, is the nation of Israel. Theory number 2, that servant is Jesus. So now what we're going to do, we honestly look at Isaiah 53, and I would suggest you start before. By the way, when I got this question, I got it yesterday, I read it through, and to do the actual test, I started reading from Isaiah 49. So don't just read that part. You go from I went from Isaiah 49 clean up to Isaiah 55. Or if you really are very, very interested and very thorough, then you should read the whole book of Isaiah. Take some time. Don't worry. This is a tough question. Then if you feel that you need to answer it, then do the study. Don't do half-hearted so that you can convince yourself. So what we're going to do is look at theory 1 and see all the evidences that it is really Israel. And then look at all the theory number 2 and find out all the pieces of evidence within that piece of literature, Isaiah 53, and whether it points to Jesus. And you will find, like in every real controversy, that the weight of evidence will tilt to one side. Once the weight of evidence tilts, you should go to that side. What's the meaning of weight of evidence? It means that both sides have some evidence. So don't dismiss one side. Accept it, keep it there. Look at that side, accept all the evidence, keep it there, and then put both on the weighing machine or the balance and see which is heavier. Whichever is heavier is the side. I'd like you to do it. If some of you do it, you will be able to see something in what I've been saying all along, because that's all I used for my study. Whenever there's a controversy, make two theories. Don't look at only one side. Make two theories, check them both out. You will find the weight of evidence going one side or the other.
Thank you so much. The next question we have, if that's possible, if it's okay to answer, it's asking, what about the problem of evil and atrocities going on in the world? If God really exists, why did these things happen?
Uh, I think that individual was not there in our first session because actually we've already answered that pretty much. But here's what I'm going to say. You should ask, okay? Even though we've answered it 10 times, that's okay because these are real questions. And I always acknowledge a real question. This came from a person who really wants to know. Maybe you didn't hear what we said the first day. That's okay. Go ahead and ask. Now, I would prefer not to answer that right now. We'll look for a little time and place it in that time frame because we have to finish some things now. And then we will answer that question once again. And if you ask for it again, I will answer it again. It's okay, my friends, to ask questions over and over again until we have a good idea because some of these topics are big. You can't grasp it in just one time. So, fine. We're going to answer it, but not right now, because right now we have just a few minutes for this session. But I have written it down already, so it won't escape. In fact, all your 15 or 30 questions that you've already given are still there. We will get to each of them.
Thank you. Those are the questions I had so far. Those were the three questions.
So we did a break. Now let's carry on then. Give me just a few seconds.
No worries. Thank you.
So the second question for today is to look at one top feature. In other words, this is what I did. Are there something that will really impress you if they say it's the top feature? It's something really impressive, something that you should look at. Yes, there are. So we're going to look at one of the top features of each of these five religions, or the five religions. Now, I'd like to place before you a challenge. Remember the first session we had? I said to be a real neutral, true inquirer, you need four things. Do you remember them? Humility, honesty, calmness, and respect. Honesty, we said, was to give credit where it is due. You should be able to do that. Why? Because if you give credit where it is due, and if the other guy gets the credit, that's fine. Because when you want credit, then you can ask for credit. If you don't want to give credit, then how can you ask for credit? Got the question? Got the idea? Yes. You should always be ready to give credit where it is due and also to withhold credit when it's not due. Then we will know the real weight of evidence. Don't simply discard because you don't like it. Oh, that guy said so out. He gets 0, I get all 10. That's not how we do this. He might have 3 or 4, and when he gets 3 or 4, that's fine, give it to him. Because you might get 5 and 6, then 5 and 6 wins. And if he gets 5 and 6 and you get 3 and 4, then he wins. Not to worry, because you're not fighting for your opinion. You are fighting to know the truth of the matter. So let's see if we can give credit where credit is due. All right, let's check it out. Islam, top feature. I think I'm not saying it's the top feature, but most people do say it's the language of the Quran. When they listen to it, they feel enveloped in a divine dimension of sound. And that is why I already mentioned it is not just the message in the words, it's the message in the sound of the Arabic language. And like I said, they go this way. This is how they read the Quran. Why? Because there is a rhythm to it. It is beautiful, and it's no question that it's beautiful. Here's a story. Ubar al-Khattab was a person who lived at the time of Muhammad. But he didn't believe in Islam. He was one of the other guys who said, this Muhammad is bringing heresy into our place here in Mecca. He is saying there's only one God when we have so many gods, hundreds of gods. One tribe, they have God. The other tribe, he has a God. And how come this guy is trying to tell us that there's only one God? This is heresy. We need to get rid of him, not just the heresy. So one day he picked up his sword and he said, I'm going to kill Muhammad. And he walked down the street going towards Muhammad. And halfway down the street, one person stopped him and said, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I don't like Islam. I'm going to kill Muhammad. The person said, hey, you want to go and kill Muhammad? Go and look at what is happening in your own house. So he said, whoa, turned around and ran to his house, opened the door, and there was his sister reading the Quran, chapters of the Quran to the local, I think it was the blacksmith. And here he did not believe in Islam. He was so angry with his sister that he walked in and just smacked her in the face, sent her sprawling on the ground, looked at all of them really with daggers in his eyes, and they all got scared and just ran away. He had been violent. He was so angry. And then he saw the Quran on the ground. They had thrown it on the ground in their haste to run away. And he just picked it up. It happened to be turned to the Surah 20 in the Quran. And just out of curiosity, he began to read the first line and then the second line and the third line. And he kept on reading. And he was so amazed at the beauty, the rhythm of the Quran, that he stopped after the 20th chapter and he said, and there are the words on the screen, how fine and noble is this speech, he said wonderingly. And this Muslim was brought to his knees, felled by the beauty of the Quran, which reached through his passionate hatred and prejudice to an inner receptivity that he had not been aware of. He got up, put his sword back in its sheath, walked down the street to find Muhammad, knelt before Muhammad and said, today I am a Muslim converted in 1 hour by reading just one chapter of the book, the Quran. And in the Quran, Muhammad is often called the Ummi prophet, the unlettered prophet, the illiterate prophet. He could neither read nor write, at least that's what their claim is. Did you get that picture? Now, did any of you say, wow, to give the credit there? Honestly, if you did not say that, then you have to ask yourself whether you are a neutral inquirer. Whereas if you said, wow, to this story, then congratulations, you are a neutral inquirer. You are willing to give credit where credit is due. I gave it the credit. The language of the Quran is exquisitely beautiful and possibly supernatural. How about Hinduism? One of the top features is its deep philosophy. Here's a statement from National Geographic. Hindu sages gave to mankind one of the most sophisticated systems of philosophy ever devised. Its deep philosophy contains a blend of religion, ethics, civil codes, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and other natural sciences. Do you know that some of the details of medicine in the ancient writings in India still haven't been unraveled today? I'll give you another example. They have divided the time itself into chunks of time. One chunk is really long. It's called kalpa. One kalpa is 4.32 billion years, B with a B, 4.32 billion years. At the other end of the spectrum is a kashta. A kashta is 3/100 millionth of a second. Whoa, what were they doing with 100 millionth of a second 3,000 years ago? The only thing we today have, which have such long and such short periods, is half-lives of radioisotopes. The radioisotope of uranium-238 is 4.53 billion years, and the half-life of some of these particles, the elementary particles, are 100 millionth of a second. Yeah, how did they know that? Amazing, right? We give it credit. So the Hindu philosophy and information is amazing, deep, and brilliant. Buddhism. Three things in Buddhism, Buddhist literature: vast, detailed, mysterious. The Pali, which is the language, just like Sanskrit. So Pali is an Indian canon, which fills 45 huge volumes. The Chinese scriptures, 100 volumes. The Tibetan, 325 volumes. Can you imagine just the literature of the Buddhists is 470 volumes. Not one volume like we have the Bible or the Quran. 470. And from that, there are other commentaries. So it's vast. It's also detailed, extremely detailed. Here's how you identify the Buddha's body. The Lord's body had 32 marks of a Superman, adorned with the 80 subsidiary characteristics. He was endowed with the 18 special dharmas of a Buddha, mighty with the 10 powers of a Tathagata, and in possession of the 4 grounds of self confidence. Can you see the detail? Yep, very detailed. The monks in their monasteries were subjected to 250 rules known as Pratimoksha rules. And one of their prayers that they're supposed to pray every day, I think morning and evening, sounds like this. May I be freed at all times from the 4 states of woe, the 3 scourges, the 8 wrong circumstances, the 5 enemies, the 4 deficiencies, the 5 misfortunes, and quickly attain the path. And you just don't say 4 states of woe. You mention the 4 states of woe and just go right through. Detailed. So it's vast, it's detailed. It is also, the bulk of this literature is couched in a deliberately mysterious language which would convey nothing to the average reader. Here's an example of Mahayana Buddhist literature. And I'm quoting their very words. Suchness, which is reality, is neither that which is existence nor that which is non-existence. Neither that which is at once existence and non-existence, nor that which is not at once existence and non-existence. It is neither that which is unity, nor that which is plurality, neither that which is at once unity and plurality, nor that which is not at once unity and plurality. How much did you understand? So when you look down at the bottom, this is my comment, it is not even nothing, but you cannot ask that question because it is mysterious. How about this? The realization that undifferentiated emptiness is the sole absolute truth. Nirvana is therefore that mental state in which one realizes that all things are really non-existent. Now there's a little clash of ideas. If all things are really non-existent, is that mental state also non-existent by which you realize that all things are non-existent? It doesn't stand to logic, but you're not supposed to use logic because it is mysterious. Get that? Vast, detailed, mysterious. Buddhism is amazing, awesome, and mysterious, possibly supernatural. So we come again to the Judeo-Christian. The writing of the Bible is the top feature, one of the top features. This is a complex book consisting of 66 individual books written by about 40 human authors over a period of 1400 to 1500 years. The spectrum of authors defies any coherent classification, for there were kings, military generals, peasants, philosophers, fishermen, tax collectors, poets, musicians, statesmen, scholars, shepherds, farmers, etc. But one of the top features is this, that there are attesting cross-references between the authors. Number one, between authors of the Old Testament. For example, there are the words of Daniel. I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of the years specified by the word of the Lord through Jeremiah the prophet. What is Daniel saying? He was given his word from the Lord, and the Lord also had spoken to Jeremiah years before. Same Lord who gave me mine, gave him his. How about between the authors of the New Testament books? Peter says this, as also our beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom given him, has written to you. So he got his wisdom from up there, the Lord, and that Lord gave me mine also, says Peter. So Peter is affirming Paul. How about between authors of the New and Old Testament? Here's Acts. Luke, who wrote the book, he says, this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. Hey, I'm writing you something that is really authentic from up there. And this is a prophecy of Joel, who also got it from up there. Matthew 1:22 says, all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet Isaiah. That's 600 to 700 years earlier. Matthew says he's got his stuff from the Lord. In fact, he saw the Lord himself, spoke to him, and he says that the Lord spoke to Isaiah. So, the Lord was the source throughout the writing of the Bible. Therefore, this source lived for at least 14 to 1500 years. This is humanly impossible. The longest a human has lived in our age that we can testify 117, 18, 19, 20 years. That's all. None among us lived to 150, live around 1400 to 1500 years. So all the top features are amazing and highly impressive. They all get excellent marks. I hope you gave them all excellent marks. In review, the New Testament is by far the best attested ancient historical piece of literature in the world. The Bible is the only writing to possess an open test for possible divine origin, which is predictive prophecy. And cross-referencing by multiple authors points to the Lord and points to a possible supernatural feature. Could these point to a red marble? Question time.
Thank you so much. That was so good. And thank you for teaching us as well to be natural inquirers and helping us to appreciate all the different religions as well. So far, unfortunately, I haven't received any question, but if anyone has a question, please feel free to post them in the chat or to raise your hand if you would like to ask the question. So I realized you said the red marble. What is the red marble that you're talking about? In case somebody missed a little bit and then they just came in and they're not sure about what this red marble you're talking about is.
Oh, yes, indeed. Like I said, questions can be repeated any number of times because they stand to be repeated any number of times. The more we repeat, the clearer it becomes. So here's what we were saying, the red marble is. We first started under the title of pluralism. What is pluralism? Pluralism says that all the religions are basically the same. So when I looked at that, I said, is it really in the writings? So when I looked at the writings of the different religions, none of them ever say that they are equal to somebody else. Each religion and belief system claims to be the only way. There's not a single belief system on earth that has ever said, I am one way and the other guy is an equal alternative. Not one. The truth really is reasonable. Look, why would you bring your case if it is equal to the other? Let the other stay there if they are equal. There's no reason for you to come there and state your case unless yours is the best. And so each religion makes that. Each religion claims to be the one. But then there are 4 or 5 of them who are saying, I am the one. I am the champion. Now, we looked at that logically and we said that they cannot all be correct. You can't have 3 or 4 queens of England. So you can't have all. You can't have all of them wrong because you must have in your hand what is right to call anything wrong. There's no human today who can go to Muhammad and say you are wrong, or go to Jesus and say you are wrong. No, you have no authority, no position, no knowledge. So you can't call them wrong. If you can't call all of them right, and you can't call all of them wrong, then you are left with only one option, that among the contestants out there, among the claims out there, only one is legitimately correct when it says it is the only way. So when you look at that, you will say, wow, how shall I find that way? Because I want to find that one way, the one that is legitimate when it says it is the only way. So we also said that we cannot compare apples and oranges. But we said we could do something. We could put another feature onto the apples and oranges. And what I showed you was that if you put rottenness and freshness onto the apples and oranges, then whichever is fresh is what you'll choose. Even though you might like the orange, you will choose the one that is fresh, which might be the apple. Or if the orange is fresh and the apple is rotten, then you'll choose the orange. So while you cannot compare apples and oranges, you can make a good choice if you place something else onto the features. And that's what we said we would do. We would place what we call para-religious factors onto the doctrines, because the para-religious factors have to do with the stories by which those doctrines came. All doctrines came to the human race by a story. And in the story, we can look for things that are not religious, but what I call para-religious, the story factors, because anybody can do that test. So now when we looked at that, we said, okay, how will we find out which is the one that's ahead or the top? It doesn't have to be the top. It doesn't have to be ahead. We realized that all it had to do is be different. For example, if I'm looking for the correct colored marble, got it? Correct colored marble. And and we already said only one, because only one guy is champion. And in my hand, there are 4 purple, 3 blues, 2 greens, and 1 red marble. Which is the correct colored marble? Red, because that was the only one that was red. If the green was the only one that was green, then green would have been the correct color. So now what we are saying is red is no better than green, red is no better than blue, but we chose red because it was the only one. It was different from all the others. So we are going to look for the red marble, not because it is better, not because it is smarter, not because it is up in front, but because it is so utterly different from all the others that that's all we can see as a unique feature. So any unique feature will make it red. That's what we are saying. So we saw that. So we saw that in this comparison, that in historicity, the New Testament is the only one that is so far ahead as a historical piece of literature. It is the best. And then today we saw it is the only one that gives you a test for possible supernatural origin. And also its top feature is utterly and totally impossible as humans to do. So with that, it does point to, now don't be dogmatic and say it is, just say clearly it points to a red marble. In other words, if you show me another one that's even redder than this, then I will go for that one. So until that time, let's go for this one. This is the red one we found.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have another question that just came in, and it's saying, every religion has something about them, as you have mentioned. So how can the gospel reach all these different belief systems?
How can the gospel reach? What is the question? Is it by radio or by TV or by speaking or by, telepathy or what? What's the question?
So if Basil is here, maybe they will be available to.
Yeah, I think there's something behind the question that is a question.
But if you want, I can read the question again. Okay. So it's saying every religion has something about them, as you have mentioned. So how can the gospel reach all these different belief systems?
May I ask whether it cannot reach? Is that your theory, that it cannot reach? Remember, our question was always make 2 theories. So are you saying it can? One theory that can reach, the people say it can reach, and you are saying it cannot reach? Is that your question? So if that's the question, then we will have to ask, how will they reach? So you'll have to describe how they will reach, and then we're going to look, like I said, is it by TV or by radio? But the thing is, if you mention those, every religion can reach every other by the radio and by the TV and by everything. So maybe your question is, what is the basis to say that yours is better than the others? Is that probably your question? How will you go, for example, to a Buddhist and say, hey, let me show you about the Christian faith? Or to go to a Muslim and say, hey, can I show you about... Maybe that's your question. And if that's your question, then first of all, good question. I'm glad you're thinking. Number 2, can you please stay with us right through to the end? Because that's exactly what this whole seminar is all about. So that when you make your own search, when you make your own study, you will be able to see for yourself. And this seminar is not spoon feeding you. I'm not trying to tell you. I'm giving you information to show you that this is how I did it. And so you should do it your way. Don't worry about mine. You can take some of the stuff that I give you, that's fine. But it will never be yours until you make it yours by your own study. That is why Isaiah 53 is a study that you will do. You should do a neutral inquiry. And I'm giving you an example of a neutral inquiry by showing you that I'm looking at all the religions and I'm looking at each one as neutrally as possible. Just ask the question and let them answer. So, good question. Please stay along with me. And when you see these points being made, jot them down. You don't have to swallow them, jot them down. And then, like I did, you also do your own study. If you want, you can use these points. That's also fine. But do your own study. And I believe the God of truth will take you to the correct destination. He is not going to confuse you. God does not the basis of confusing and only those who can come through the smoke screen, figuring out what it is. That's not how he's going to give it clearly. We saw how in one aspect, the last two studies, it's pretty clear. The weight of evidence becomes very clear. Do that and I think it'll be good.
Thank you. This is a question that we had from yesterday that unfortunately we weren't able to answer. And if that's okay. And they're asking, could you please put the origin of all the 5 religions on the discussion that was yesterday, in their chronological order?
The question of chronology, I think I can understand. Yep, it's a good question again. But you should recognize that chronology, especially on the Indian peninsula, is an extremely difficult thing. Because here's how the Indian historians used to write in those days. In the 10th year of Emperor Ashoka, but they won't tell you when the first year is. So how will you figure out which the 10th year is? So, when you look for real fixed dates, it's very difficult in the Indian tradition where Hinduism comes from, where Buddhism comes from. Can you see? So we can try to do it, and we can look at it of these 5. Here's how we would go about it. We would say that Hinduism really pulls it in the writings to about 1500, settle about 1500 BC or BCE. You can even go back earlier than that because they do refer, for example, to the starting of our present age, which is Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is this age in which we are. It started in the year 3102 BC. So that's where we trace its starting, but it was not written in 3102 BC. The writings we have, which can be traced back, cannot be traced back further back than 1500 or so of BC. And again, like I said, we do not know the exact dates. So that is that date, Hinduism. When it comes to Buddhism, we know that Gautama Buddha lived about 480 some BC, and the writings were written somewhere around 100 BC to 180, somewhere around there. They were starting to be written, all right? That is Buddhism. Judaism, we understand, are the books of Moses. And possibly the book of Job actually predates even his writing of Genesis when he wrote, when he was out there in the deserts of Midian. That is what they say. So the deserts of Midian bring us to about, again, 1500 to 1500, some to 1400 BC. That's when it was written. Okay, we're talking about writing the actual stuff down. So we've done 3. What's the 4th one? The baby of it is Islam. Did we do all the others? Hinduism, Buddhism we did, Judaism, Christianity. Christianity is 1st century AD, because Jesus came in the 1st century and the writing was done in that same century. So the starting of the Christian writings is from the 1st century. But remember, the Christians accept the Judaic literature as part of their literature. So their writing also can go back to the book of Job or the Torah, which are the 5 books of Moses, the books of the law. The Islamic faith Muhammad was born 570 AD and he died 632 AD. So his writings are then, or rather his sayings, the writing was put together, like we said earlier, in 652 CE. By that time, they had put it together in writing, but without the marks which say how to pronounce the words and divide the sentences and all that. Like in the ancient writings, also they don't have those marks. But that was done in about about 652. The other big bunch of Islamic writing is called the Hadith. The Hadith are writings by individuals known as traditional writings. And like we said, there are different levels of credibility, but they all began writing about 200 years after Muhammad. So that'll be about 800 odd AD. And they're all written, they're classified or identified by the writer's name. And we said the most authentic ones are Sahih, the Sahih Hadith. And there are two of them that are understood to be very authentic and credible, Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. The next level is Hasan. Both of these two are acceptable. Below that are the Maudu and the Daif. They are not really very good ones to quote from. So I think I've given you the origins of these 5 religions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there was a question that was pretty similar to the one before that we had. So how can gospel approach / reach out other belief systems? And I believe you're giving us the response to go as natural inquirers ourselves and see.
That's one. There's one more aspect, I think, to this that we should know.
Mm-hmm.
The message, just like the Muslims say, the message of the Quran is not in just its words, but also in the sound. So the message of the gospel is not just in words, but in deeds, in life, in the way you portray yourself. And that is where God wants a group, the Christian God, Jesus, Father and the Holy Spirit. They want humans to reflect a certain type of life. The type of life, along with the reasoning that we are going to give during this whole seminar, those two must go together. You can't just say the words because that's not the message. You can't just say, look at me, because then if you say, look at me, they'll say, look at me. So we've got two people to look at. No, you've got to say, look at me and my life. And here's the reason why I'm giving you that you should look at me. And the reason should make good sense. And that's what we're trying to do all this while. You should have a good reason for what you believe and also live it out. That is the two-pronged way in which the word gospel will go out. By the way, the word gospel is very peculiar. And so we're going to study that next week. In fact, we have 2 sessions on just the gospel. Then, so your question is good. Why don't we come back at that time and definitely be back there at that time? You'll get a good idea, I think, of what you're asking for and the meaning of the word gospel. In fact, if you remain through the whole thing, you will realize why, number one, I am passionate about this. That's number one, I am passionate. Number 2, you will realize that it makes real good sense. The whole thing makes real good sense. It'll grip you intellectually. It also can grip you emotionally. And with the intellectual and the emotional grip, it will change your life. So you will have to live in a certain way. You can't live like before. And even if you live in a certain way, yeah, you will make mistakes, but you're always headed in that direction. So that is the way the gospel is going to go ahead, not just in words.
Thank you. I think time is almost fast spent. We got a question, if we'll be able to squeeze it in. Somebody's asking, at what point did the years begin to count downwards? That's talking about 600 BC to 400 BC. And who has started that process?
These are what is called a convention. A convention means somebody who just started it out and showed that this is the way we're going to do it, and then everybody does it together. It's called a convention. There's nothing wrong or right about it, but we must ask, where is the dividing point? Which is the dividing point that makes it what is called BCE, before the Common Era, which is BC, like in the previous terms, and which is CE, the Common Era, same as AD. What divides that? The division point is actually pointing to the birth of Jesus. So the exact date is a little different from the birth of Jesus, but the event is supposed to be the birth of Jesus. So birth of Jesus divides history into two, BC and AD. Now, who started it exactly? I honestly am not sure who started it, but the whole world acknowledges, at least the whole Western world acknowledges this. There are other calendars, however. For example, the Mayan calendar, that's a different calculation. The Hindu calendar, I just told you, that this age started in 3102 BC. And also the Muslim calendar. The Muslim calendar is monthly calendar. It's not like our yearly our month has different days. One is 28 and one is 30 and one is 31. The Muslim calendar has 30 days. That's it. So they're a monthly calendar. And their calendar started, I think, on June 17, 622 AD, when Muhammad moved from Mecca to Medina, shifted out. That starts the calendar of the Muslims. So if you ask which is the dates, you're asking which one. If you want to do the Muslim one, then you'll have to go by that convention. If you want to do the Hindu one, you'll have to go that convention. If you want to have the one that's most widely used one, then it is BCE, before the Common Era, which is BC, and AD, which is Anno Domino, and CE, which is Common Era. So it depends on which one you're talking about.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Pandit. Oh, I think somebody just put their hand up. We'll have this as the I think they put it down again. Never mind. Thank you, Dr. Pandit, again for today's session. And it was really interesting. And thank you all for joining as well. So the topic for tomorrow is going to be Founders Compared. It's going to be Highest Claim and Founders Compared, Message and Mission. So we're looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow at 7 p.m. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to send them to the link that I'm going to post in the chat for tomorrow, or any question that you weren't able to answer today. We'll try our best to answer them tomorrow. Thank you all and have a nice evening.